Not every mistake we make is criminal, but unfortunately you will live with the consequences for the rest of your life. Hi friends, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self Protection. I'm your host as always, John Correa. Back with me, our podcast host, Mike Williver.
Today's video comes to us from North Hollywood, California.
Firearms Legal Protection is who I trust to help me after a use of force incident. If you're a Firearms Legal Protection member, you can attend our monthly Active Self Protection training seminars for free. Check out all they offer to their members at the link below. The beginning of this one is literally beyond weird. Watch this guy come in with his bicycle into the store with that big cable lock around his arm. And I have sped this up for the sake of time. If you go watch the original, this takes like 15 minutes. Watch this guy walk his bike around. He put on this weird looking jacket and now he dumps his bike by the top of the escalators at this department store in North Hollywood. And he's just kind of chilling out and being weird for a while. And you watch, he picks up his bike like he's thinking about throwing it over the balcony there, and his lock is sitting there, and I don't know why they don't have security over here to mess with this guy, but eventually they kind of start paying attention to him. This is our first assault. Is watch him here. This looks like an employee, and he's going to reach over and assault her. I think borderline, you could probably call that a sexual assault in reality. And now they're going to start the calls to dispatch. So one of the supervisors is going to call over and say, hey, we just had a guy who's assaulting people here, and now he's picked up this cable lock and starts swinging it around a little bit. And notice, again, he's just hanging out, and now he starts swinging this cable around and threatening people with it. Now we've definitely escalated from simple assault to aggravated assault. Again, I'm just trying to speed it up simply for the sake of time, where they start encouraging people to evacuate. And you can go watch the original, I've linked it in the description, that has 911 calls. There are multiple of them saying that they were trying to evacuate people. Now watch, this guy starts going down the escalator and then assaulting this other woman who decided to go down the escalator in front of him, who apparently didn't know that he was the one who was the attacker. And then she starts heading down and he tackles her at the bottom of the escalator. And I'm letting this one go at regular speed, because now what is this woman gonna do? She decides to try to get past him again rather than going back up the escalator. And then watch this other woman, having watched all of this assault happen, just head down the escalator like it's another day. I gotta be honest with you, when we look at lessons on this one, that is a shocker to me, because she just thinks, oh, he's gonna let me go by, but he doesn't. He is gonna grab a hold of her as well and take a swipe at her. Thankfully, she got away with nothing worse than that, so he decides that's a good point, that he doesn't need to have pants on anymore. He goes and exits the store for a couple of minutes, comes back in. This is how long this goes. When he goes up, now we get the response of several of Los Angeles' finest. And they are going to go and try to find the guy, but in the interim, he finds this woman and starts just absolutely attacking her with the cable lock that he had. And you see the number of times he hit her in the head, and she is going to be badly cut from this and start bleeding from her head pretty bad. And she's, I'm sure, in a state of shock here, starts to try to kind of back away from him a little bit, but now he's gonna grab a hold of her and start dragging her down through the aisles. And man, watch out on this one, everybody. It's not necessarily graphic, but it's serious. See him hit her there in the legs. She tried to kind of put her feet between her and him, and he's just standing here beating her and whipping her with that cable lock. And that's got some significant heft to it. That's not a little bitty bike lock or anything like that. You can go read the news stories that I've linked in the description. There are a couple of pictures of it. It's a big, thick, beefy one there. And so now he's gonna grab her and drag her around. We don't kind of get to see them. They go off camera for just a little bit, but our victim here is gonna struggle back and try to get away. And we're gonna see here, it's gonna cut. You can see at the very top of the screen, the officers are starting to kind of muster up and have some idea where this guy is while he's still beating this woman utterly senseless. Now, from this place, as he is still beating her, they're coming up. We do have badge cam from the responding officers. There are multiple badge cams from them on the original. I've arranged it just with the pertinent badge cam here, so let's listen in.
Oh, slow down, let me take point with the rifle. Hey, back up.
Get out.
Hold on. He's going to two.
You got it? You got it?
Yeah.
I know. Okay.
Word.
He's hitting right on the right hand side.
Hey, she's bleeding. She's bleeding.
Hold up. I got it.
Shot fire. play. Soft play. Hey, handcuff.
Turn around! Get on your fucking stomach! Turn around! Get on your fucking stomach! Turn around. Get your hand down. Get your hand down. Here, that. Here, I'll cover. Grab my two first.
Hey, get all right.
The officer did hit the perp, and he laid down and took the room temperature challenge. The unfortunate truth is you can see the dressing room wall here right behind him. One of the shots missed the suspect. LAPD thinks that it was a ricochet. I kind of don't think that it was a ricochet. I think that it was a miss. In any case, there was a 14-year-old girl behind that dressing room wall, and that bullet went into her, and she unfortunately lost her life as well. We do get a bunch of lessons here. Oh man, this is the kind of outcome that we all just lament. And as we think about lessons on this one, our condolences to the family of the young girl who lost her life. Now this is a terrible incident all the way around, and as this guy gets going and is obviously out of his mind and just looking for a fight, my first thought here is, why didn't these normal people either get the heck out of the danger zone or step in and do something about this guy?
You know, I took Stephanie Widener's class recently, and she talks mainly about women, but people want to rationalize things. People want to make believe that everything's okay. They don't want to think there's a bad thing happening. And they will wait until they're the victim, practically, until they realize what's going on. We talk about radically and rapidly accepting reality for what it is. Everyone in there, everyone around that guy, there was an electricity in the air around this crazy person who's doing all this crazy stuff. And everybody in there knew. Now, some of them could have just been completely oblivious, which is hard for me to understand after 30 years in LE, hard for you to understand, hard for our viewers to understand. However, there are people out there that just have no idea what's going on around them. They got headphones in, they're staring at their phone. Now, to have not seen what this guy is doing, to be so oblivious to it, or to try to rationalize it, is something I can't really fully understand. But we see numerous people do it. I think there's coming up here, there's this lady on the escalator who just
obliviously walks right into it. I can't believe it.
I have to believe she saw what happened. So I have to believe that she hoped against hope somehow that this wouldn't happen to her, that he would just let her go by. But that's crazy. If you're in this position, if you have to jump over to the up escalator and run for your life, run for your life. Avoid this person.
Yeah, and hope is not a strategy. And even this woman, the cops are coming to help, but it's almost too late. She's been assaulted like crazy. Now, let's think about our officers here and some lessons here on the badge cam. Now, of course, our officers goes to the front, and we have in front right now, we have a patrol rifle, which is certainly a pool rifle here. This is an old government 1033 program rifle, and a shotgun. And our officer pushes to the front, and certainly if I'm going to what I think of as an active killer, and this guy has heard reports that there were a gunman at loose here, this officer did at least, I think, I want to have a long gun. And I don't know, would you choose the shotgun or the rifle in that case yourself?
If I were going to a place like this where I could potentially have a long distance shot, as you can see, there's, I don't know how many yards it is to the other end, but I want a rifle in the situation every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Now, we are gonna talk about the rest of this incident as though this guy thought there was a shooter, because that's what we think he thought, is there was an active shooter inside of the place. And you see the injuries on this victim up here, it looks very much, she could have been shot in the head.
I agree, I think a rifle is the right choice here for sure, because of the distance that you certainly could have. And this rifle, yes, it's old school, it's an old federal government program to get officers rifles. But it'll do the work if you need it to do the work, as long as the gun will run. And this is what he sees. You see him, everybody's saying, hey, slow down. No, he sees, no, she's bleeding. And I think there's a time to slow your roll, but then there's a time to get after it. And he sees a bleeding victim and gets in there, and I think he should be commended for that initiative.
We talk a lot on this channel about LAPD and their outstanding training, their outstanding group tactics. And I think a lot of that is, hey, let's slow everything down, let's get... An active shooter or someone actively assaulting someone is not the time to slow things down. I'm sorry. It's the time to get in there as quickly as you possibly can and end the threat, which I commend this officer for doing. That's exactly what he thought was happening. He thought there was a shooter and he saw someone bleeding and he's like, no, we're not slowing it down. We're speeding up. We're getting in there and we're going to get after this guy as quickly as we possibly can.
And I think there's a time to know to take your foot off the gas pedal. Okay, let's organize, let's communicate, let's make sure we're doing things the right way. But when you see, no, I see where the problem is, that's the time I got to mash that gas pedal and solve it. So I think that from that perspective, I think this officer did a really excellent job. Now, of course, outcomes are going to be what we're judged on. And so we have to make sure that we see that. So watch him come around the corner here, see this woman, he sees the trail of blood leading up, and now he identifies that threat. Is he justified to shoot this man in this moment? I think there is no question of that. I think that given the totality of the circumstances, this guy's actively assaulting people, causing this great bodily harm to the woman who is sitting in front of us, and that threat continues on, I think it's the right choice to shoot this guy.
You sent me this video to preview before we watched it. The first time I watched it is, I'm seeing what he's seeing for the first time. I thought he had a little kid held up at the end of the aisle here. I thought he was holding up a child or a person or something. And you notice it isn't until he puts that aside and drops it that the officer fires. Now he's, at this point, any second now he's going to be looking through his optic, through his sights to look at this guy. So we'll never know exactly what it is he saw, but he's 100% justified in this moment, in this very moment, to shoot, and that's what he does.
So now it's a question of the skill set backing up the decision making, and he had excellent decision making here. Now, if we're paying attention, I'm going to show you how the shots break here. Is that he gets the first shot off on the guy. So I slow it down for the sake of time. We see a shot break, so the guy starts to move. This is why it's so important. Second shot breaks, quarter second later. Third shot breaks, another quarter second later. So he shot 3/4 second splits. One of those 3 shots missed and hit an innocent bystander. Now, I don't think a quarter second split on the flat range is a big deal. I think that's actually quite acceptable from a carbine at this kind of distance. But man, you got to make sure in real life places that you actually put a shot where you want it.
Well, you said pool rifle, and I'm hoping against hope that this is his assigned rifle that he gets to zero and do all that sort of stuff with and rehearse and practice with. Those are pretty quick splits. I don't think he was reckless by any means.
No.
I think he thought, perhaps he thought that was a kid or something he was now lunging towards, and he's like, I got to get after this guy now. This is we always say your first shot's your best shot. So these 3 rounds, I think were sure. Were they quick? Absolutely. Were they reasonable? I think so.
I think so. And so this is tragic. This is a bad outcome. This is not what we want to see. This is obviously, putting a shot on a 14-year-old innocent kid is horrific bad. But did he do something that was reckless? No, I don't think he was being reckless. I think what he was doing was heroic. Was he being negligent? No, I don't think that he was blind firing or anything like that. I think he simply missed. And so is it criminal what he did? I don't think it is. I think that what he did there was an accident. And just like there are plenty of times that when we as private citizens would have a traffic accident, we did something wrong, and even if that would cause great injury to somebody else, that doesn't make it criminal and doesn't mean that we will face charges. But just like that private citizen will then have to live with what happened to them, this officer will have to live with that.
He'll never get over it. I mean, it's something that he'll live with for the rest of his life. It'll be the first thing he thinks of when he wakes up in the morning forever. And I'm sure if he could take that third shot back, he absolutely would, but he can't. And this is, like you said, it's a bad outcome. It's like if a little dog runs in front of your car and you swerve to avoid him and end up hitting a person. Nothing you meant to do, you were trying to do the right thing, and it had a bad outcome, and this is unfortunately a bad outcome. And the blame for this lies with the person who probably should have been in jail already, who was let out for whatever reason, and is now beating this woman to death. Attempted murder, by the way, is what we're seeing here.
Absolutely.
Beating an innocent woman to death in the middle of a store with a bike lock. It's his fault, not the officer's, and I feel terrible for this officer and for the family of this young lady.
Now, and again, on the officer's sake, I hope that they give him significant mental health help and the family, right, of the deceased, because that is going to haunt him and it's going to haunt them for a long time to come. And so my call to all of our officer viewers is that recognize you need to have the skill set on that day to make the right choice, because you're going to have to live with it. Even if you end up being declared justified in what you did, you have to be able to live with that. And so that's critically important. I also think there's a lesson here, the guy that says, here, Sarge, hold my shotgun so that I can go do things. You've got a sling on the shotgun. Use the stupid sling on your shotgun. And also, of course, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about spiritual fitness in this particular one, that you want to make sure every day, all of us, we don't know if it's going to be our last day or not. So make sure that you have said everything you need to say to your loved ones, that you've solved every conflict that you possibly can, that you're at peace with your family, and that you and Jesus have a strong relationship, because on that day you'll need it and you may not have time to get it.
Absolutely true. I've known law enforcement officers that have taken their own lives, and it's a career of stress and trauma, day in and day out, viewing the most awful things. to add something like this to that pre-existing PTSD, I can't imagine what it's like. And I keep saying on the podcast, spiritual fitness is absolutely critical. You got to be right with your God and your family and your friends and everyone, your loved ones, before something like this happens, because you don't know. When these officers went to work that morning, they had no idea any of this was going to go down, but here they are. And so now would be too late to try to affect that spiritual fitness and strengthen it. I pray for this guy.